Welcome back to Reddit Talks. Our team carefully creates and hand edits every story to help improve your mindset through storytelling. All of our content is 100% original and human-led. Enjoy the video.
At my wedding, my in-laws mocked my mother before 300 guests and my fiancé laughed. I stood up, canceled the ceremony on the spot, and delivered one final move that made their perfect world implode. When I picked up the microphone at my own wedding reception, 300 guests fell silent in 5 seconds flat. My fiancé's hand was already reaching for my wrist, too late. His mother's champagne glass hovered frozen halfway to her lips, and my mother, Sofia Ramirez, who had worked 2 jobs to raise me alone, sat in the second row with tears pooling in her eyes while still trying to smile. I should have been cutting cake. Instead, I was about to burn down everything I'd spent 18 months building. This wedding, I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest, is over. But to understand why I did it, why I torched my own fairy tale in front of everyone I knew, you need to understand how we got here. I met Alex Monroe 22 months earlier at a fundraiser for the East Side Children's Literacy Foundation, where I worked as their development director. He walked in late, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and immediately got cornered by our executive director, who smelled money from across the ballroom. Alex was 29, vice president of acquisitions at Monroe Holdings, his family's commercial real estate firm. Dark hair, easy smile, the kind of confidence that comes from never having worried about money. When he approached me at the silent auction table, I was reorganizing bid sheets and trying to look busy. "See, the vintage typewriter or the wine basket?" he asked. "Depends," I said, not looking up. "Can you type or do you just drink?" He laughed, genuinely laughed, and bid on both. Then he asked me to dinner. I almost said no. Men like Alex Monroe didn't date women like me. I grew up in a rent-controlled apartment in Riverside Heights. My mother cleaned office buildings at night and worked retail during the day. I went to state school on scholarships and grants, graduated with honors and $32,000 in debt. My entire wardrobe could fit in 2 suitcases, but Alex was persistent, charming, and for 6 months, he made me feel like those differences didn't matter. His family was another story. I met Thomas and Claire Monroe 4 months into dating at their estate in Willowbrook Acres. The house had actual columns. Their driveway could park 12 cars. When Alex introduced me, his father shook my hand with the grip of someone handling paperwork, his eyes already dismissing me. "So you work in philanthropy?" Thomas asked over dinner, the word sounding vaguely distasteful. "Nonprofit development," I corrected. "We secure funding for literacy programs in underserved communities." Claire smiled thinly. "How noble." Alex's sister, Madison, barely looked up from her phone. "Do you even make enough to live on?" "Madison," Alex said, but he was smiling when he said it. I should have noticed that smile. I told myself they just needed time, that they'd warm up once they knew me better. Alex kept insisting it was fine, that his parents were old-fashioned but harmless, that Madison was just going through a phase. Red flag number 1, he never defended me. He only asked me to be patient. The engagement came 8 months later. Alex proposed at the same fundraiser where we'd met, getting down on one knee in front of 200 donors and colleagues. The ring was platinum with a princess-cut diamond, beautiful and excessive. Everyone applauded. I cried happy tears. His parents sent a bouquet of white lilies the next day with a card that read, "Welcome to the family." No names, just printed text. Planning the wedding became a masterclass in passive aggression. Claire insisted on the grand Willow Hall because anything smaller would look cheap. She sent me a list of appropriate caterers, all starting at $200 per plate. When I suggested incorporating some of my mother's favorite dishes, traditional Mexican cuisine she'd grown up with, Claire's response came via email, "Let's keep things elegant and neutral for such a large guest list." I told Alex. He said, "She's just trying to help. You know how she is." Red flag number 2. Every boundary I set, he reframed as me being difficult. My mother never complained. Not once. "Mija," she said when I apologized for the 20th time about the menu situation, "it's one day. You're marrying someone you love. That's what matters." Sofia Ramirez had raised me alone since I was 7, when my father died of a heart attack on a construction site. She worked overnight janitorial shifts at office buildings downtown, then pulled morning shifts at a department store. She packed my lunches in Tupperware, helped with homework at kitchen tables that wobbled, and never once made me feel like we were struggling, even though we were. She taught me that dignity wasn't something you bought. It was something you carried. So when the Monroes made subtle digs about humble backgrounds, or asked with fake concern if my mother needed help paying for anything, I bit my tongue. I told myself it was temporary, that after the wedding we'd have distance, space, our own life. Red flag number 3. I was already planning my escape route before I'd even said I do. The week before the wedding, Alex's parents hosted the rehearsal dinner at their country club. 60 people attended. His extended family, college friends, business associates. My side consisted of my mother, my best friend Carmen, and 2 cousins who drove 6 hours to be there. During dessert, Thomas stood up to give a toast. "Alexandra and I," he began, using Alex's full name like he was introducing producing a CEO? We've always taught our children to aim high, to surround themselves with excellence. He paused, smiling at the crowd. Sometimes that means taking risks, expanding your horizons, bringing in fresh perspectives. A few people chuckled. Alex nodded along, grinning. Thomas continued, "We're proud of Alexandra for choosing love even when it meant, well, let's say, bridging different worlds." My mother's smile flickered. I felt Carmen tense beside me. But that's what makes this exciting, isn't it? Watching two people from such different places meet in the middle, even if one of them had to climb a little farther to get there. The room erupted in polite laughter. Someone whistled. Alex raised his glass like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. I looked at him, waiting for him to say something. Anything. He winked at me, like it was a joke we were both in on. Red flag number 4. I was marrying a man who thought humiliation was humor. I didn't sleep that night. Carmen found me at 2:30 a.m. sitting on the bathroom floor of our hotel room. "You don't have to go through with this," she said quietly. "I've already sent out 300 invitations. That's not a reason to get married." I pressed my palms against my eyes. "I love him, Carmen." "You love who you thought he was," she said. "That's not the same thing." She was right, but I couldn't admit it. Not then. Not with the dress already altered, the flowers already ordered, the deposits already non-refundable. So I told myself one more lie. It'll get better after the wedding. The wedding day started at dawn, hair and makeup at 6 a.m., photos at 8. By 10, I was standing in an ivory mermaid-style gown that cost $4,200, half of which I'd paid myself, despite Alex insisting his parents would take care of everything. My mother arrived at the bridal suite carrying a small velvet box. "I wanted to give this to you before the ceremony," she said, opening it carefully. Inside was a simple gold bracelet, tarnished with age. "Your abuela wore this when she married your grandfather," she explained. "She gave it to me, and now I'm giving it to you." I clasped it around my wrist, and for the first time all morning I felt something other than dread. "Mama," I whispered, "if you told me not to do this, I wouldn't." She cupped my face in her hands. "Mija, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you this. Never let anyone make you small. Not even someone you love." I should have listened. The ceremony itself was flawless. Grand Willow Hall looked like something out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers, white roses arranged in 6-foot centerpieces, silk draping that probably cost more than my student loans. 300 guests sat in gold Chiavari chairs, watching as I walked down the aisle alone. My mother had insisted I didn't need anyone to give me away. Alex stood at the altar in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo, looking like every rom-com groom. When I reached him, he squeezed my hand and whispered, "You're perfect." I wanted to believe him. Reverend Patricia Hayes, a woman Alex's family had known for decades, led us through the vows. We exchanged rings. We kissed. Everyone applauded. For exactly 17 minutes, I was Mrs. Alexandra Monroe. Then we walked into the reception hall and everything shattered. Dinner was served at precisely 6:15 p.m. Filet mignon with roasted vegetables, seared scallops, risotto made with actual truffle oil. The kind of meal my mother would have served at the office buildings she cleaned, not eaten at. She sat at a table with my cousins and Carmen, wearing a simple navy dress she'd bought on sale. She looked beautiful and completely out of place among the designer gowns and Rolex watches. I watched Claire Monroe glance at her twice, whisper something to Madison. Both of them smiled. The speeches started at 7. Thomas went first, standing at the head table with a champagne flute and a microphone. He talked about Alex's childhood, his academic achievements, his natural leadership abilities. Then he pivoted. "Marriage," Thomas said, grinning at the crowd, "is all about compromise. Finding someone who complements you, even if they come from completely different circumstances." A few people laughed. "We Monroes have always believed in hard work and earned success, but we also believe in charity, in giving opportunities to those less fortunate." My jaw tightened. So when Alexandra told us he'd fallen in love with someone from a more modest background, we were surprised. But we're proud of him for following his heart, even if it meant lowering certain standards. The laughter was louder this time. I saw my mother's face go pale. Alex laughed too, not uncomfortably, not nervously. He thought it was funny. Then Claire stood up. "I'll keep this brief," she said, her voice dripping with false warmth. I just want to say that today proves love truly does conquer all, even significant class differences." Someone whistled. Someone else clapped. "Some of us," Claire continued, looking directly at my mother, "come from elegance and refinement, and some of us come from, well, let's say, humble service work. But isn't it wonderful that we can all sit at the same table today?" The room erupted in laughter. My mother's hands shook. She didn't look up, and Alex, my husband of 47 minutes, grinned and raised his glass. Madison grabbed the microphone next. "I think it's sweet," she said, her voice sugary and cruel, "that someone with absolutely no pedigree managed to snag one of the city's most eligible bachelors. Really goes to show, if you work hard enough, you can marry up." More laughter. Someone spilled wine. Someone shouted, "Cheers to that!" My mother stood up quietly and started walking toward the exit. That's when something inside me snapped. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the marble floor. The room fell silent in stages. First the tables closest to me, then the ones farther back until 300 people were staring. Alex grabbed my wrist. "Babe, relax, it's just a joke." I yanked my arm away. My voice came out calm, cold, deadly. "Sit down, Alex." He froze. I walked to the podium, my heels clicking with each step. Claire tried to hand me the microphone like she'd done me a favor by warming up the crowd. I took it. "This wedding," I said clearly, my voice echoing through the hall, "is over." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a fork. Alex stood up, face white. "What are you doing?" he hissed. "I'm doing what you should have done," I said, turning to face the guests. "I'm standing up for my mother." I looked at Thomas first. "You talked about hard work and earned success," I said. "Let me tell you about someone who actually knows what those words mean." Claire tried to interrupt. "This is incredibly inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" I laughed. "You just mocked my mother in front of 300 people. I'm returning the favor." I turned to the crowd. "My mother, Sofia Ramirez, has worked 2 jobs since I was 7 years old. She cleaned office buildings at night and worked retail during the day. She never missed a parent-teacher conference, never missed a school play, never made me feel like we were anything less than whole, even though my father was gone and we were broke." I saw my mother at the back of the room, unfrozen in the doorway. "She raised me to believe that dignity isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn by how you treat people when no one's watching." I pulled an envelope from inside my bouquet. I'd tucked it there that morning, just in case. "Now let me tell you something none of you know about the Monroe family." Thomas stood up. "That's enough. Sit down." My voice cut through the room like glass. He sat. 10 years ago," I continued, "Monroe Holdings was drowning in debt, tax evasion, fraudulent accounting, illegal offshore transfers. You were 6 months away from bankruptcy and federal investigation." The room went silent. Claire's face drained of color. Madison set down her champagne glass. "My mother cleaned the offices of Whitman and Associates, a small investment firm downtown. One night, she found confidential documents in the trash, documents proving that Monroe Holdings had been funneling money through shell companies to avoid taxes." I opened the envelope and pulled out photocopies. "She could have sold this information. She could have gone to the press. Instead, she brought it anonymously to Whitman's legal department. They brokered a quiet restructuring deal that saved Monroe Holdings from federal prosecution." Alex stared at me, his mouth open. "My mother asked for nothing in return," I said, my voice shaking now. "Not money, not recognition, nothing. She did it because she believed in doing the right thing even when no one was watching." I turned to Thomas. "And today, you mocked her. You laughed at her. You called her beneath you." I placed the documents on the head table. "Here's everything." Oh, the original case file. Emails from Whitman's lawyers thanking the anonymous source, which was your exact wording, Thomas, and a letter you personally signed promising the matter was resolved permanently. Thomas looked like he'd been struck. "Oh," I added. "And one more thing." I pulled out my phone and held it up. "These documents also show that the tax fraud never actually stopped. It just got more sophisticated. And as of this morning, everything, every email, every bank record, every shell company has been submitted to the IRS and the Securities and Exchange Commission." The hall exploded. Guests stood up, whispering frantically. Phones came out. Claire screamed that I was lying. Madison knocked over a champagne flute. I calmly removed my engagement ring and placed it next to the cake. "There will be no marriage," I said. "And there will be no Monroe Holdings by this time next year." I looked at Alex one last time. "You had one chance to stand up for me. You laughed instead." Then I walked down the aisle, not as a bride, but as someone who finally chose herself. Behind me, the Monroe's perfect world began to crumble in real time. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within 48 hours, Monroe Holdings was under federal investigation. The story broke on the local news first. Prominent real estate family faces tax fraud allegations, then went national. Business partners issued statements distancing themselves. Deals froze. Investors pulled out. Alex called me 63 times in the first week. I know because I counted before blocking his number. The voicemails started apologetic. "I didn't know they'd go that far. I'm sorry. Please call me." Then angry. "You ruined my family over a few jokes. Do you understand what you've done?" Then desperate. "I love you. We can fix this. Please." I deleted every single one. Carmen helped me move out of the apartment Alex and I had shared. We took my clothes, my books, my grandmother's bracelet. I left the furniture, the kitchen appliances, the framed engagement photos. My mother and I rented a small 2-bedroom in the same neighborhood where I grew up. We ate takeout on mismatched plates and drank wine from coffee mugs. It was the first time in months I'd felt like I could breathe. One night, about 3 weeks after the wedding, my mother finally spoke about it. "Mija," she said quietly, folding laundry at the kitchen table. "I keep thinking maybe I should have stayed home that day." I grabbed her hands immediately. "No," I said firmly. "You deserved to be there. You deserved to be honored." She cried then, not from shame but relief. "I was so scared," she admitted. "Scared they were right, that I wasn't good enough, that you'd chosen them over me." "Never," I whispered. "Not in a million years." The legal fallout took months. Detective Marcus Chen from the Financial Crimes Division called me twice for statements. He was patient, methodical, a 15-year veteran who'd seen worse but still seemed genuinely disturbed by the Monroe's arrogance. They thought they were untouchable. inevitable, he told me during our second meeting. People like that always do. Attorney Rebecca Ortiz, the prosecutor assigned to the case, was less sympathetic to my role. You sat on this information for how long? She asked during our initial consultation. I didn't sit on anything, I said. I found it 2 weeks before the wedding when I was looking for our marriage license in Alex's office. He kept files at home. And you didn't report it immediately because I was terrified, I admitted. Because I thought maybe I was wrong. Because I loved him. She softened slightly. For what it's worth, your testimony is solid. We've corroborated everything. By November, Thomas Monroe was indicted on 14 counts of tax evasion and fraud. Claire faced charges as a co-conspirator. Monroe Holdings filed for bankruptcy protection. Alex was never charged. Apparently, he'd been kept deliberately ignorant of the family business. Plausible deniability. Madison tried to salvage the family name by giving an interview to the Willowbrook Chronicle. My brother's ex-fiancé destroyed our family out of spite, she claimed. She was always jealous of our success. I didn't respond publicly, but Carmen did, posting the full story on her legal blog with receipts, timelines, and documentation. It went viral within 24 hours. The comments section was ruthless. Imagine being so entitled you mock the woman who saved your family, then act surprised when she has receipts. The Monroes really said, let them eat cake, and got the guillotine. This is what happens when people confuse wealth with character. Madison deleted her social media accounts 3 days later. I didn't become famous. I didn't want to. I returned to my job at the Eastside Children's Literacy Foundation, where my boss, Dr. Helen Tran, welcomed me back with open arms and a box of tissues. I always knew you were a fighter, she said, hugging me tightly. I just didn't know you were a goddamn warrior. I threw myself into work, securing grants, building partnerships, creating programs that actually helped people instead of performing charity for tax write-offs. 6 months later, I launched a new initiative, a scholarship fund for children of service workers, janitors, housekeepers, retail employees, delivery drivers, the people whose labor makes everything else possible but who are rarely seen. We named it the Sofia Ramirez Scholarship Fund. My mother cried for an hour when I told her. A year after the wedding, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, just a plain white envelope with my name handwritten on the front. Inside was a single piece of paper. You destroyed us. I hope you're happy. A.M. I read it twice, then folded it carefully and threw it away. Because the truth was, I didn't destroy anyone. They destroyed themselves the moment they chose cruelty over compassion. The moment they mistook wealth for worth. The moment they laughed at the woman who had saved them. I just held up a mirror. 2 years later, I ran into Alex at a coffee shop downtown. He looked older, thinner. His suit was off the rack, his shoes scuffed. He was alone. Natalie, he said, his voice hoarse. Can we talk? I considered it. Part of me wanted to say yes, to hear him apologize, to understand how he'd justified everything, but a bigger part of me knew it didn't matter. No, I said simply. We can't. I'm sorry, he said anyway, for all of it. I was a coward. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even pity, just nothing. I know, I said. Goodbye, Alex. I left him standing there and walked home to the apartment I shared with my mother, where Carmen was waiting with takeout and bad reality TV. And for the first time since the wedding, I felt genuinely, completely happy. People ask me sometimes if I regret it, if I wish I'd stayed quiet, gone through with the wedding, tried to make it work. The answer is always the same. No, because calling off my wedding wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite. It wasn't even justice. It was clarity. The moment I stood up at that reception, I stopped performing for people who would never value me. I stopped shrinking myself to fit into spaces I was never meant to occupy. I chose my mother. I chose my dignity. I chose the truth. And if there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this. Never stay silent when someone you love is being humiliated, especially in public, because silence always sides with cruelty. I stood up. I spoke out. I walked away, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Share your story if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your integrity. Sometimes the bravest thing we do is simply refuse to stay quiet.